You know, sometimes little items stand out bigger than the trillions of dollars. It's hard to comprehend the trillions and the hundreds of billions. So there's one thing that went on in Iraq that I think you can remember, and it makes them look silly. Why are they doing this? And that is, they decided after we conquered Iraq, you know, they had all those nukes and everything over there, and we had to conquer them. But we conquered them, and we started having the green zone, but we built an embassy in the green zone. And the embassy is big as the Vatican. And just recently in the DOD budget, they put authorization and funding for 17,000 people to be employed in the embassy in Iraq. And do you think they're planning on coming home? I would say the suggestion be that if you're going to save that $1 billion, what we should do is save the billion, put half it to the deficit reduction, and put it into some program here at home where we can help some people who have learned, unfortunately, to be so dependent on the government just to stay alive. I think that is a solution, that if we'd stop that money spending overseas, help people out of here home, and take those 17,000 jobs and make sure they're jobs here at home, not overseas. Now, the one thing a president can do without congressional authority is he shouldn't go to war without this Congress approval and have a declaration. But one thing he can do, a president can do, and I would do, is I can end the wars that are undeclared and unconstitutional. The commander-in-chief is in charge of the military. He can direct the military. We can bring them home. And they say, well, you want to bring them home too fast, we don't have enough time. Well, when they want to go send them over, they get them together and they ship them off rather fast. Why can't we ship them home just as fast? Now, it's not just in the war zones of the Middle East, but it's in the perpetual occupation of countries that we don't need to be occupying. And that is South Korea and Japan and Germany and all these countries and the nearly 900 bases that we have. Close them down, bring them home, and very quickly, I mean, if we pursue this, you will organize a military someday, but you don't do that the first week. But get them home. And just think of how many people would be spending their wages here at home rather than in the German economy and the Japanese economy. Bring that back. That could be like a stimulus. The big issue in the campaign has been the economy and jobs. And the interviews have been pretty good, and you get a chance to answer them. But, you know, if you get 30 seconds or 60 seconds, what are you going to do to turn the economy around? And you're going to answer in 30 seconds. They took 40 years to mess this up, and you're supposed to answer in 60 seconds about how to correct it. But I can list a few things in 60 seconds that would help a whole lot. Have sound money, get rid of the regulations, reduce the taxes, bring our troops home, and change our foreign policy. And lo and behold, that could be very, very helpful. And repeal the laws. But it does take a while to get a consensus and have this happen. But the most important thing you have to do to turn it around is you have to get rid of the mistakes that have been made. Pricing in the free market is crucial. Mises, way back in 1912, said socialism can't work because they don't have a free market pricing structure, and it's impossible to work. And he was right, and it failed. But Keynesianism and what we have today, we fix the prices on one half of it. We fix the prices and alter the value of the dollar and fix the interest rates. So this would be, and it causes all the distortions. Well, you can't get back to growth until you get rid of the distortions. So you have to liquidate debt and you have to get rid of the malinvestment. And politically, that's difficult. People don't want to do that because they're frightened. When the crisis came in 2008, it was announced, well, if we don't bail out the banks, everybody's going to suffer. There'll be a depression. So what did we do? Spent trillions and trillions of dollars bailing out the people who were making all this money, and guess what? The people got the depression and the people lost their homes. So that didn't work. We still have the debt on the books. It was just shifted from the wealthy to the poor and the middle class because it's on our books, on our monetary system, and in our treasury. So that has to change. So what we should have been doing in 2008, which has been said by many Austrian economists, is when the crisis comes and somebody's bankrupt, you have stricter regulations, not weaker regulations, and the strict regulations say, you've messed up, you go bankrupt and wipe that debt off the books. You don't go to the people. But in many ways, we've lost confidence in freedom in general, and we've lost confidence in an understanding of how free markets work. And we've been always talked into saying, well, there's always going to be people, you know, that will need help, and therefore we have to help them or they'll fall through the cracks. Well, when you do it their way, the way the Keynesians have done it, the cracks get bigger and more people fall through them. And you say, well, you know, and we always get charged with saying, well, if you don't help those kind of people, then you don't care. You have no humanitarian concerns. But I've come to the conclusion that if we do have humanitarian concerns, which I have, and I'm sure you do, the best way to take care of human needs is to have a free society and free markets and sound money. That will take care of the maximum number of people. They're always saying and charging us with this not caring. But if you sacrifice a little bit of liberty, let's say that you do say, well, we have to help those in need. The reason I think that is wrong is because, at first, it's not morally right to steal from one group to give it to another, regardless of what their needs are. Economically, it doesn't work, and it fails. It's not constitutionally authorized. But when you help a little bit, a few people, you've sacrificed 100% of the principle. You've endorsed redistribution of wealth, and we're bound to grow. That's sort of like saying the income tax is not so bad if it's 1%, like it started out. But 1% has endorsed the principle that the government says they own all your income, and they'll allow you to keep a certain percentage according to their dictates. That's why the income tax is the worst type of tax on a free society. And I think so much of what we've done in these last quite a few decades has been undermining this principle of our personal liberty. So many have not understood exactly where our liberties come from. They think it comes from the government. That's why they own our lives. I had one member of Congress sitting beside him, and we were voting on something that was protecting the consumer or doing something. I said, why do you have to do this? You know, why do you feel compelled to vote for this? He said, well, the people are too stupid to take care of themselves. Those were the words he used, and that's the attitude they have, and they believe that. And But they don't recognize it, and we can't argue that there will be no problems in a free society. It's just that they would be minimized. And there would be a lot more wealth in the country, and there would be a lot more charity in the country, and we wouldn't need the government. As soon as you do the government, you just destroy the wealth, and you destroy the free market and the whole thing on the whole property rights. But what we have done, though, is we've undermined across the board this whole idea of whose life it is. The government assumes it's their money, the government's money, and that it's your life. The basic principle of the draft, it says that we can draft 18-year-olds to go off to war. I know there's not a draft now, but young people still have to register just to remind everybody, in case we need you, we'll ship you off, you know. And the most outrageous suggestion I hear, and there's a famous liberal economist today now talking about and arguing the case that wars and depressions and recessions. That is a criminal thought, as well as it's absolutely wrong. This idea that the Second World War, it was taught to so many of us in school, oh, the Depression ended with the Second World War. Yeah, because they hauled off 16 million Americans and put them in uniform, the unemployment rates went down, but they were getting shot at and killed, you know, and but the prosperity did come. Prosperity came well after World War II. It took 17 years to get rid of it. But this idea that when we get into trouble, if you have a war, that'll stimulate the economy. It doesn't. It just redirects the investment. There'll be war profits. Some workers and business people might make it. But if you build a bomber that goes over and gets blown up, it didn't increase our standard of living in any way whatsoever. So this is a very dangerous thought, but it's based on the fact that governments think they own us and control us. They do that with the assumption of foreign policy that they can use our young and send them off to fight these wars with no purpose. They do it in economics, assuming that they have to regulate you to take care of you and tax you and assume that they own you. But what about in the other sense? The other sense that they are convinced that you can't protect yourself. But giving up liberty in order to gain protection from the government is foolhardy, and we should never have to give up any of our freedoms to provide security for ourselves. So, in a personal way, this attack has been systematic for many, many years. It's been done with this ill-advised war on drugs. Just think of what they do in the name of regulating drugs. I thought we had a pretty good test of prohibition back in the 20s, and that we had to repeal it. But right now, everybody assumes, well, we've spent over $1 trillion on the war on drugs. We haven't gotten rid of the drugs, but we've gotten rid of our liberties. People have these SWAT teams going into the wrong houses and killing people. But it's time we recognize that it's your life. Yes, if you want to do something dumb, you're allowed to do it in a free society, but you can't go and beg other people or require the government to take care of you do dumb things. One thing that's always been hard for me to understand is our country is still pretty good in protecting religious freedom. I think there's less tolerance than there used to be because there's some phobias around on this. But basically, most Americans say, yes, you have a right of no religion or any religion, and that seems to be fine. We protect intellectual freedoms as well, pretty well. But when it comes to your own body and making your own decisions about what foods you eat and what you drink and what you smoke and what you do in your personal habits, all of a sudden, there's a bunch up there, liberals and conservatives, say, well, the people are too dumb to protect themselves. They're always going to do harm to themselves, and we know what's best for them, and we will take care of them. So that is insidious in the culture, and there's this belief that you need some nanny state to take care of us. But once again, it isn't an argument that it's a perfect society. But the society that I don't want is when the government controls us, whether it's financial control or personal control or religious control or control by forcing us into these wars. That's what we don't need. We need to stand up and demand our freedoms. course, nobody will forget where they were on 9/11. That's 10 years ago. And those were difficult times, especially for those of us who were trying to explain exactly what 9/11 was all about. But immediately afterwards, there was a fair amount of legislation that came up. The first bill that came to the floor to rectify these problems that